Good morning, students. Now I'm hoping you're able to get me clearly. Welcome to this session. This is research design, and I'm going to take you through this course this semester, and I'm hoping that you're able to get my audio clearly. If there's any challenge, you tell me. So allow me to share the screen. One of you can confirm there that you are able to get me clearly. If there's any challenge, you tell me. So this is our course outline that we are going to check together this semester. And the unit code is BISF 1305 or BIT 03102. And this is research design, research skills and design. So here, as a student, you need to be introduced to some research methodologies. So I'll be taking you through some techniques, approaches, tools, and also the skills that are relevant across our field. This is ICT or even BISF, IT, BISF, so that you'll have that knowledge and also that skill to be able to conduct research at any given point. So also I'll be guiding you through ethical and also some professional issues that will have to impact your research as you conduct your research. You're aware that research is a very key concept and you have to keep on updating yourself through doing more research. Expected outcome. So someone to confirm that my audio is okay, you can send any chat there so that you people will move together. Is there any challenge so far? Expected learning outcome, we need to discuss some assumptions, approaches that will have to be associated with research and some strategies in IT. And also here, we need to check some approaches of data connection, analyzing this data to do with the IT field. I'll also guide you through types of research. We have quantitative, qualitative research studies, and depending on the area that you want to research on, a specific method will have to fit in. Then I'll also guide you on how to write a research proposal in IT that will have to include problem statement, research questions, literature review, then research methodology, data connection, research design. Thank you, Ransom. That's okay. Can proceed. I'll also guide you on how to come up with a conclusion and recommendation as you conduct your research. Prerequisites, there is none. It's not a must that you must have done a particular unit for you to do research. No, this is open to all. So the first topic there is introduction to research. I'll have to introduce some concepts. How do you identify a research problem, stating a problem, all these. Then we'll have to still introduce in our next session. We'll discuss in details how to come up with a problem that is existing in an area. Still, number 4 here. This is the first and second. 3, the 4 will have to take you through literature review. Literature review means checking what other scholars have done in your area of study. So you are not the first one to come up with a concept or even a particular knowledge or information. Just been there, maybe just improve on it. So you have to conduct what is called literature review. Literature review by finding out what other scholars did and how can we improve on it. You identify a gap from it. Then ethics in research. Of course, as a researcher, there's a way you're supposed to conduct your research, how you're supposed to carry yourself in the entire process. I'll guide you on the same. Then research design. How do you come up with a research design? Depending on a particular type of research that you want to conduct. How do you identify the sample size? Assuming you want to carry out a research at KCA University, how will I be able to sample particular participants? Which criteria will I use? All that I'll guide you when it comes to sample design. Then measurements, levels of measurement, types of variables, validity and reliability in research. All these are key concepts that we all need to check as we continue with our research. Types of variables, I'm hoping you did this some times back. We have dependent, independent. and I'll discuss the same in details using some key examples. Research instruments, how will you be able to connect data? There are several ways, and also how will you be able to analyze so that you can get meaningful information out of that data. The aim of research is, yes, to connect that data. Then from that data, after analyzing it, the aim is to come up with a concrete information that will assist scientists or even some researchers to come up with a given decision. So data is key in any research. Data is the key concept. Then lastly, I'll also have to take you through how to write a report, how to come up with a research proposal, and how, okay, I have to check this in, and also how to come up with a final research report. Those are the key areas that we'll have to check together during this semester. Check your platform, your portal. I've shared all these notes, so you read ahead. It will be easier for us to understand the concepts. These are the core materials that I'll ask you to get the information from. Then I've also given you some recommended reference materials there. Reference materials there, and some journals, the ones that have been published, and also some e-resources. All this will assist us as we continue with our research. So my name is George. I've given you my details here. In case of anything, get in touch with me. You can send an email, you can call me or text me, and we'll have to continue together during this semester. So that's a brief introduction to the course outline. Now let's start with the first topic. Unless there's any question. When it comes to research, I've given you all these notes, but don't expect me to read everything there. I just have to summarize. So research in any area is something that people will have to undertake. You have to undertake research. As our first topic here, ensure that at the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain the concept of research. Make sure you'll be able to do that. Then you should be able to differentiate between research methods and research methodology. So make sure you're noting those objectives, because at the end, you have to evaluate yourself whether you have achieved that. One, the concept, you have to explain the concept of research. Two, differentiate between research methods and research methodology. Number three, explain the purpose of research. And also another objective that I want us to achieve here is you'll be able to discuss the key characteristics of a scientific research. So I just have to introduce in the next around 40 minutes or 50 is okay. And that one will be okay. Now, I want us to note this in research. People keep on undertaking research in order to find out things in a systematic way, so that they can increase what? They can increase knowledge in a given area. So the role of research is to recognize also, or to bridge the gap that may be existing in a given area. So it comes to definition. I've given you several definitions there. When it comes to systematic way, when we are saying that research is an exercise of finding out things in a systematic way, it means that there is a guidance and also there is a methodology. You cannot just conduct research anyhow. There's a methodology which, as a researcher, you should have to follow. So when it comes to the reliability and also the details of that information of research that you're taking, it will have to follow the systematic way so that your data can be relied upon. You can be able to create a concept from your data. So if you really want to do a research as a researcher, you have to find out something valuable. You have to do it in a systematic way. You're supposed to follow methodologies which are developed by the scholars who are there before you. Then, as you also focus on those definitions that are there, you have to ask yourself, research research is a continuous process. It's a continuous process. And why are we doing this? To increase knowledge in a given area. Where we are in this field of ICT, or even in the world that we are in, we have conjoined general amount of knowledge. Knowledge is all over out there. So, but if you want to generalize that concept, or you want to come up with a concrete information that will assist you to decide on something, yes, it's okay that you conduct the connect data connection, so that you can be able to even convince the individuals who will be presenting your results to that your work is legit and it can be used to make a particular decision. So as a researcher in IT here, your task is to always bring some piece of idea or some piece of knowledge. So the idea does not mean that you have to come up with something new. That's something I mentioned. You can rely on what other researchers have done before, so that you can increase the knowledge on that area. So those are the key definitions. You can, it's just to carry out a diligent inquiry, examination of a given area. For example, in our IT field, you can decide to focus on cybersecurity, you investigate, you explore, and you follow a systematic approach. That is the logical sequence. Then, when it comes to research methods, I've said I will be adding some concepts even if they are not here. That's why you have attended this session, you follow. When it comes to research methods, those are the techniques or even the procedures that you as a researcher, you'll have to apply when you're studying research problem, so that you can answer your questions. A research will be mapped, or it will have to rely on some questions that you have to answer. So when you're developing a research proposal, you have to come up with some research questions. That is in chapter number 1, the first chapter. So that as you carry out your literature review, as you carry out your research methods, you should be trying to answer those questions. So a research method will have to explain how you as a researcher will have to identify, connect, process, and also analyze data. So that's a brief introduction to research methods as well. And I'm hoping that you have understood that concept, unless you're stuck somewhere. So why do we, the purpose of research, in this one I'll explain as we continue. But when it comes to research methods, okay, source of knowledge, note this, methods will focus on collection and description of that data. For example, as one researcher may decide to use interview, another one may decide to use observation, questionnaire, all that. Then you need to analyze this data. You need to analyze quantitative data. Then after all, number 3, you need to evaluate that data, validity of it, the accuracy of those results. Then it comes to research methodology. I want you to note this. You as a researcher, you have to choose a particular research method that will have to justify, that will have to rationalize why this method is better than option B. So you have to justify. Even as you do your research, you will have to tell us, why did you decide to use method 1 and not method 2? And I'm saying all this will depend on what you need to achieve at the end. So when it comes to research methodology, there you are deciding now which particular method to apply. For example, we have some quantitative, qualitative techniques. If I decide to focus on quantitative approach, here, quantitative, you may compare two variables because you're dealing with something measurable, something quantitative. Because now, when it comes to these variables, you need to study and also examine the experience or the perception of a given area. A good example is this. Assuming you want to carry out a research on the perception of lecturers teaching online. So I'll have to collect data from the trainers, those who are teaching, and also from students. Then I try to analyze those to understand the relationship between those variables. Now with that, it will depend on the kind of data that you want to collect or the kind of research that you are doing. So if it is dealing with some variables, I'll advise you to focus on quantitative. So if you're dealing with data that cannot be quantified, you will focus on qualitative. So hoping you have noted that. So when you are choosing the research methodology, you have to ask yourself some questions. For example, was the research instrument designed appropriately? You have to check validity. You have to check reliability of it. Can you rely on it? If I want to use what we call, we have SurveyMonkey or these online tools for conducting research, why did I decide to choose that one? If I want to use interviews, maybe one-on-one with my respondents or my participants, is that reliable? Is that valid? So you ask yourself such kind of questions. So as a researcher, I want you to justify the rationale of a research method that you have chosen at any given time. So I've guided you very well on how to differentiate between research methods and research methodology. Is there any question from any one of us? So in summary, I've said a research method is more to do with a technique or a procedure that you have followed to solve a given problem. Then a research methodology is now the actual research method that you have decided to apply, and you justify why have I chosen option A but not B. So that's okay. Now, let me focus on these definitions. We have to understand what is research from the beginning before I even proceed. When it comes to research, I want you to think about research. We have RA and then we have search. RA and also search. Re is a prefix, and we are all aware that re means to do something again and again. Re signifies, it will have to signify repetition or again and again. For example, we can say rewrite. We are doing that exercise again. Maybe rebuild, repackage. Now, when it comes to research, re will have to signify again. It means you want to build again and again. This is the same thing with the research. It means research is to search again and again. We are repeating what was done by scholars again. Then you have to ask yourself, what are we searching for? Because if others have researched on this area, what am I searching for? So as a researcher, I want you to note this. We are just searching for knowledge. We're searching for knowledge. The aim of research is to look for knowledge or even to criticize. As a student, mostly in this area of IT, you should not be satisfied with anything that you come across. You have to criticize. And that is the idea of research. You ask yourself, why is this done in this way? Why not another alternative? If I try plan C, will it still work or will it be better than what I've found? So do research again and again, try to re-examine what is there so that we can search for a particular knowledge to fill in the gap that is there. So you'll have to ask yourself what is there and what ought to be there. You ask yourself, if I do it in another alternative, will it be better? So, and that one will take us now to those definitions here. So as a researcher, I want you to focus on replication of what was there. There is a problem. You cannot conclude that everything is okay 100%. A problem must be existing in every domain. So a problem does not mean that when things are going bad, but still a problem in any situation will make you as a researcher to ask yourself why. That's why I've said as an IT student, as a student who is taking BASF, you ask yourself why in quota. That is a key concept. Why is this thing like this? So therefore, even if when things are going well, the researcher will always ask why, and that one will give us the gap. It will give us the gap that we'll have to call for investigation. Still, you can see I'm summarizing all this. That's why I said you'll not have to read everything. You focus on what I'm explaining here. So, as a researcher, by identifying that gap, that one will give us the discrepancy between how things are and how they ought to be. And how they ought to be. And that's why even us in IT, this area of programming, you cannot just stick on a particular system that you have found there. You can even ask yourself, if this is a web-based application, what if I try to make it a mobile-based application? If it has used this paradigm, why can't I try another paradigm? So with that, you'll be able to identify, you'll be able to identify a gap. So that why means that there is a gap that we'll have to call for investigation, and that is investigation is what we call research. Now I've given you a very good background of research, and you'll be able to know why are we doing this research. Just is to the aim is to generate new information. So as a researcher, the moment you have identified this gap, you have to get the answers. You have to get the answers from that problem. How will you find that? How will you find that answer? You will find answer by collecting data. Now you'll have to collect data, you'll have to analyze data, you'll have to write report, and also disseminate the finding to your audience. You share or you distribute this information to your audience so that they can answer the problem that is existing in a given area. So the purpose of research as is given there is to discover new knowledge. You can see it there. Then to describe a phenomenon, then to enable prediction. You can be able to predict something, also to control any given area. Maybe you're controlling depending on what you want to achieve. Then to explain a phenomenon, and also to enable a theory development. You may need to develop a theory on a given area. So as a researcher, maybe there are some individuals who are sponsoring you to conduct a given research so that you can be able to advise them accordingly. So why do managers need better information? That one you can read. I've said that I won't have to repeat everything. If there's any challenge, unmute yourself and talk, or you just type there. Don't remain silent if there's any problem. So in research, note this, we conduct research. We conduct research because there's a problem that is existing. Then research is a problem driven. You will never conduct any research if there is no problem. And I've said this problem will be identified using why in quote question. That's something that you should always focus on. Then note this, research is not conducted out of hearsay. You note that the problem must be documented, something that you can rely on. So don't just conclude that I want to conduct a research because I heard this and that. Avoid hearsay. You must have scientific data to back up your idea. So just note research is a systematic way, scientific investigation, and ensure that there is that idea of collecting data, analyzing data, interpretation of data, so that we can be able to understand the real problem that is existing. And by saying here, there's somewhere, okay, to describe a phenomenon. To describe the purpose of research there is to describe a phenomenon. You note this, a phenomenon is just an object of investigation. It is what you as a researcher is interested in investigating. Maybe one of you here, you are interested in security, cyber security. Another student is interested in IoT. Another student is interested in artificial intelligence. So we have different areas of interest. So the phenomenon will not be the same. Here, it can focus on a program. a project, a policy, or even an institution or an organization. I may need to focus on cybersecurity, maybe in mobile banking. I may need to focus on privacy, protection of data privacy, maybe in e-commerce. Now it will depend on where am I conducting this kind of research. We have different phenomena, different areas where we are conducting this kind of research that we're interested in. Then, by saying systematic, there's that keyword that I don't want you to leave behind. Systematic in research, it means that your research will be represented, or it will have to be developed and also represented or presented in a coherent manner. Coherent manner, it means a methodological based on laid out procedures. It's not something that you can generate anyhow. There's a methodology from problem identification, identifying that gap, setting some research questions, objectives, then a literature review, methodology, data connection. Okay, I've noted this one will have to be upgraded. Okay. So we can just conclude this in 10 minutes, but I'll communicate to the relevant individuals. Okay. So then, by saying that it's a scientific investigation, it will have to imply that this process of research must be conducted carefully, following specific steps and with specific objectives, so that we can be able to solve problem under consideration, and also be able to come up with findings that are relied upon. So ensure that as you carry out your research, there are some objectives that you need to achieve. These objectives will act as a map or as a blueprint when you're taking or you're carrying out your research. So source of information, all this, you may get information from the research that was there before. So all this is something that you'll check, but just allow me to check the characteristics of scientific research. So anytime you're carrying out a research here, when you're carrying out a scientific research, there's some key characteristics that you need to focus on. One, it must be specific. I still add some points, but still you can check on what is there. It must be specific. You must have a purpose. Any good research must have a definite purpose. What do I want to achieve? What is the focus at this particular field or at this area? So a statement of the purpose of the study will have to guide you to achieve your objectives. So you note that, that's our first point. Hoping you're noting this somewhere. Any scientific research must have a purpose, or it must be specific. Then, number two, it must be in a control group. If I'm focusing on students, if I want to find out from students, maybe how do they view or even the implication of these virtual classes, and I decide to focus on SOT department, School of Technology. Then if I happen to find another student there in the institution doing another course, I will not subject the questionnaire to him or her, because I have a control group from where I want to pick the data from. Then number three, a scientific research must be empirical. It must be empirical. Empirical means it must be based on some observation. It must be based on some measurements of a given phenomenon and explain that phenomenon at a particular point. There's somewhere I explain about phenomenon in details. Any scientific research as well must be manipulated of independent variables. We have some types of variables, and these variables will enable us to test. So a good research must be testable in terms of the objectives and also the hypothesis that you have developed. So you have to ask yourself, have I tested the data that I've collected? Is it something that I can comfortably present to someone so that they can be able to make decision out of it? So I've talked about testing, then there must be some treatments. This is all to do with precision and also confidence. So here means the exactitude of your results will be based on some samples. So it means the probability of that that data that you're presenting to some individuals based on your conclusion or even data analysis, it must be close to accuracy, if not 100%. Then objectivity of your results, they must be object based on some facts, based on some actual data. So don't conclude a given research based on your emotions or based on your own subjective values. So that's not something that will be able to rely upon. Then, as you carry out your research, I want you also to note that any scientific research must have high ethical standards. High ethical standards. Assuming I'm focusing on personal or privacy data, personal data protection. When it comes to mobile banking, so you'll be able to access personal data, maybe some contact ID information, date of birth, all that kind of information. Or if you are dealing with medical details, maybe you're developing an application for a hospital, you access patient data. So you have to conduct research with high regard of respondents' privacy. And you should also assure them confidentiality. Depending on where you're collecting your data from, always assure your participants that their data is well protected, that you will not have to use their data without their consent. Then another characteristic of scientific research, it must be problem driven. So all these are something that I've given you, and hoping you have understood all those concepts. So there's a process there of research process, but I just have to summarize this. Still have 4 minutes. Purpose of research, we had seen it somewhere here. Purpose of research. Okay, so that one I not have to repeat. Then you notice when it comes to research, there are 3 areas that I'll have to introduce here. Research will focus on either being descriptive, you can note somewhere, descriptive, exploratory, or explanatory research. So when it comes to descriptive research, the aim will be describing the characteristic of a population. For example, you may need to find out what a particular population needs. For example, if it's IT department, I may ask students, what are some of the programming language that you want to be taught? Then exploratory research. Here, you want to investigate a problem that is not well defined. It's a problem that is there. For example, when the government was talking about CBC implementation, yes, there was a report that was presented, but now they want to find out, even to come up with a clear picture of what is there. So when you want to investigate a problem that is not well defined, we call it exploratory research. Then exploratory research, this one still will have to build on exploratory and descriptive research so that you can go further to determine the cause and the reason. You want to extend a theory or a principle at any given domain so that you can provide an evidence to support or even to refute an explanation or a prediction. For example, initially, many thought that we cannot deliver sessions virtually. There was that notion of fallacy. But by conducting exploratory research, we came to find out that even virtual classes are effective as long as you're able to deliver as per the learner's expectations. So that's a summary of what we have said. Allow me to summarize by saying that we have checked on research. Why do we need to conduct research method, research methodology? We have also checked scientific research, some characteristics of it. It must be problem driven. I've talked about it, and I've also checked on descriptive, exploratory, and exploratory research. So this document I've shared, may I just request you to read ahead? I can see I only have 1 minute. I'll still discuss all this in details in our next session. You can you can still check on this, no problem. So the assignment is this, using any relevant example from your area. I know you have BISF students and you have BIT. Using relevant example from your area or specification, justify the statement, research is a scientific process. Note that research is a scientific process. Just justify that. Using relevant example from your area of specialization, justify the statement, research is a scientific process. Just work on that, then we can meet next time. Any question? I have less than 1 minute. Any questions so far? Okay, make sure you have supplied the admission number there, so that will be marked present. So let's stop there.